After finishing her sarcastic, goodbye speech, Air turned her back on everything without even looking back. Not long after that, Pure called Loft to come home. Just by hearing her sister's voice, Loft could already tell that something was very wrong. When she walked into the living room and saw Pure sitting quietly on the sofa, Loft didn't say a word. She just stood there, silently watching her sister cry her heart out, tears falling and sobs shaking her body. Of course, Pure felt guilty about what happened with Air, and naturally, seeing Pure this heartbroken made Loft feel sad too. She had once promised herself not to bring up the idea of ending the relationship unless Pure asked for it first. But now, she couldn't help but rethink that decision. Maybe Pure just didn't have the strength to keep forcing things anymore. Loft slowly walked over and sat down beside her. She gently placed a hand on Pure's shoulder, giving it a soft squeeze to comfort her, while crying too. Even after everything, Loft was still glad she had met Pure. This girl had never once made her regret falling so deeply in love, but at the same time, the guilt of hurting someone else was too strong. It kept them from truly being happy, especially when just seeing Air's face could bring so much pain. What should we do next? That question alone showed how unsure Pure was, and it hurt. It sent a wave of pain through Loft's chest. She could already sense what was coming. If Pure had been certain they should stay together, she would have asked something like that. The moment she hesitated, Loft knew she had to brace herself for the kind of heartbreak that might be too heavy to handle. You once told me to choose the path I wouldn't regret later, Loft said softly, wrapping an arm gently around Pure's shoulder and stroking it lightly, trying to comfort her, to calm her down. Is there even such a path, one where we won't regret anything? Can you live with the guilt? Loft asked quietly. Pure couldn't answer. After just seeing Air a moment ago, she already knew the truth, even when her ex wasn't standing right in front of her. The sadness in her eyes said it all. It wasn't something she could ignore. There was no way Air's presence wouldn't affect her. I'm really suffering, Pure finally admitted, head bowed, tears falling again and again. I'm suffering too, seeing you like this, Loft replied. Then she stopped talking. The silence hung in the air. Pure slowly turned to face her. Loft looked back but didn't say anything for a moment. If your heart is hurting too much, maybe it's better if we end things here. She had never wanted it to end like this, but the truth was Loft could carry the weight anymore either. Both she and Pure had once smiled together, full of dreams. They'd laughed, even if some of those laughs were bittersweet. It had been truly wonderful being with someone like her, but deep down, there was always a part of it that never felt fully at peace. The love I wanted to give you, let me keep it for now, Loft said gently. One day, if you ever feel ready to speak your heart, then I'll be here to listen. Pure closed her eyes, and at that very moment, tears began to fall silently down her cheeks, as if someone had just pressed a button to release them. In her moment of weakness, she leaned into the arms she had always run to when she needed comfort. And Loft, as always, didn't turn her away. She wrapped her arms around Pure's slender body and gently pulled her close. Her hand rested softly on Pure's back, offering a warm, comforting touch. Loft's embrace had once made Pure feel safe and warm. But today, that same embrace only brought a deep, aching pain that wouldn't go away. I'm sorry, Loft, I'm really sorry. Pure felt just as guilty toward Loft as she did toward Air. Loft, the tall girl who had brought light into her once dark heart, didn't deserve to be treated this way at all. She deserved to be loved by someone else, someone who was pure. Someone who would actually say, I love you, unlike her who had never once said those words, even though Loft had always shown her love. It's okay, Loft said softly, resting her head, which reached about Pure's shoulder, as Pure gently stroked her hair. At the same time, Pure, who was holding Loft around the waist, pulled her even closer, while her sobs grew louder too. The beautiful older woman was completely broken, with no sign of healing. Sometimes, Loft couldn't help but wonder, when would someone like her ever truly be happy? From the very first time they met, those eyes already showed deep pain. Her sweet, charming smile often seemed forced, even in moments when music blasted loudly and colorful lights danced around them. Pure would glance at her ex-lover with a look full of longing and sorrow, silently begging for sympathy. But that person never gave her what she needed in return. Pure remained trapped in that cycle until one day she finally chose someone new, but that someone happened to be Air's younger sister, making it impossible for the talented artist to ever be truly happy. The ties of closeness, trust, and shared history only added to the burden, turning love into something painful and full of conflict. It was only because she was Loft, just that simple, just that unfair. If the woman in her arms had fallen for someone who had no connection or ties to Air, she wouldn't have had to suffer like this, and that reason alone was enough to shake the thoughts of the one who had been chosen. You don't have to apologize anymore, P. Pure, Loft said gently, but even so, Pure still felt like she had wronged her. What Loft was saying, it meant they should end the relationship they had just agreed to start not long ago. Pure remembered clearly how wide that tall girl's smile had been, how her eyes had shone with overwhelming happiness, and now, to say goodbye. How could Loft possibly handle that? I'm sorry for letting you face this alone, Loft whispered. Because their relationship was still uncertain and unstable, like a stick planted in soft mud, Loft didn't know what she should have done during the situation just a few hours ago. Was she supposed to be the one sitting beside Pure, or should she have stepped back and let the two of them talk freely? The beautiful older woman never said she wanted Loft to stay. If she had truly wanted that, she would have said so, and that made Loft realize Pure would face everything on her own, just as she always did. Pierre doesn't want to see the two of us together, Pure said softly. She didn't feel like Loft had left her to face everything alone. That tall girl would have done anything if only Pure had asked. If she had admitted earlier that she couldn't handle all the pressure by herself, she believed Loft would have stayed, would never have stepped away like she did. But after thinking it through carefully, Pure realized that Air's anger would only grow stronger if she saw them standing side by side, the very two people who had, in her eyes, hurt her together. That's why Pure chose not to let Loft stay with her. She's already hurting enough as it is, Pure said. Like I said, the guilt will probably stay with us for a long time. Maybe it would be better if P. Pure and I go our separate ways. Our punishment, you mean? Finding happiness while Pierre is still hurting, that's still a terrible thing, isn't it? Hearing herself say that, Loft almost wanted to laugh bitterly at her own life. She didn't want to care about how anyone felt. She wanted to be happy, truly happy, without ever looking back to see whose heart she might be breaking. She wanted to be selfish, to chase a version of happiness where she did have to feel pain, and at one point she had really intended to do just that. But in the end, she couldn't ignore Pure's suffering. Loft realized that ending their relationship might be the best thing for both of them. At the very least, the small woman trembling from crying so hard would finally have the time and space to begin healing her broken heart. So none of us should be happy then, Pure said, trying to make it sound fair, like they were both equally at fault. But deep down, she believed the one who deserved happiness the least was herself, just her, no one else. The one who had caused someone else pain shouldn't be allowed anything other than suffering in return. It had been a long time since her heart had known peace. It was constantly shaken, constantly hurt by one thing after another. She had watched Air walk away, swallowing her feelings with difficulty. She had waited, clinging to fading hope. And yet, she still cherished those rare moments when that person would smile at her, those brief visits of warmth that kept her going. But whenever air disappeared again, Pure was left in the same emptiness. She lived with the question, why was she never someone's first choice? And all this time, had Loft ever asked herself that same question? Pierre is hurt, Pure is hurt, Loft is hurt too. What they did together was too cruel, especially to Air, who had no idea what was going on. That's why none of them deserve to enjoy happiness or live peacefully while someone else is still drowning in pain. Both of them had to shatter themselves into pieces. That was the only way it could be enough. They had to be completely broken, deeply scarred in order to truly take responsibility for their reckless actions. This really feels like a moral test. You can see it that way, but honestly, we just can't find peace in our hearts right now, and love that doesn't bring peace probably won't last. I'm sorry. Loft had once been her comfort, but when things went too deep, other feelings took over, leaving no trace of that comfort behind. We've already punished ourselves. Loft didn't want to say this, but the girl, whose eyes were red, trying to swallow the lump in her throat, her hands clenched tightly on her lap to hold back the emotions, took a deep breath as if gathering every bit of strength she had left to say, "It was nice to meet you, Pure. I'm truly glad we had time together." Her hoarse voice revealed that she never once regretted meeting Pure. Every second with her made Loft happy, even if the ending was what they had hoped for. The journey they shared would forever be etched in their heart, never to fade. Me too, Pure replied softly. Her gentle hand, trembling just slightly, reached out to touch Loft's cheek. With the tip of her thumb, she tenderly wiped away a falling tear. The one receiving that kindness closed her eyes, as if trying to absorb every bit of comfort and warmth she could in that fleeting moment, because who knew how long it would be before she might feel it again? Or perhaps that chance might never come again at all. Don't suffer for too long, okay? A hand, only slightly bigger, rested gently on the back of hers. Loft pressed down softly, hopping to make the message stick in her memory. I don't even know when. Don't bother telling me not to wait. I'm not going to wait anyway, Loft said. You don't have to wait. If someone comes along and makes you happy, go ahead and be with them. I'll still be around nearby, but I won't interfere. Because unless they completely cut ties, pretending they no longer exist in each other's lives, the lingering feelings would never truly fade with time. She knew this from experience. Saying, don't wait, but still staying close never helped anyone. Okay, I'll do whatever you say. Anything, just say the word. Thank you for loving me. Pure didn't know if this was the end between her and Loft, but either way, she still wanted to say thank you, to acknowledge the love the tall young woman had given her. You're very welcome. Once again, Loft felt like she was drifting in a dream, but this time it was a nightmare. She had never expected to be chosen, but she was, and from almost being Pure's lover, she suddenly became just someone else in her life. It happened so fast. She flew briefly into the cold wind before falling hard to the ground, bruised and battered. But even then, Loft smiled, showing that she truly meant it when she said she was happy. It was a farewell, though neither of them knew if they would ever cross paths again. She soared briefly into the cold wind before falling hard to the ground. The impact was rough, leaving her bruised and battered, but even so, Loft still smiled, showing that she truly meant what she said. She was genuinely happy for her. It was a goodbye, though neither of them knew if they would ever meet again. The time had come to take responsibility for the consequences of their past actions, and that moment had just begun. They had a chance to choose whether or not to get involved in the chaos. and they hesitated only for a brief moment, but that split-second decision ended up having serious consequences that still affect the present. Loft and Pure's relationship could no longer continue. Air and Pure couldn't go back to how things used to be, despite what they had once imagined. Even the goodwill between Air and Loft, as siblings, had completely faded. Living carelessly was starting to take a heavy toll, jumping into wild, intense relationships, like riding a roller coaster, was now making these thrill seekers experience emotions far beyond just excitement. Living with too much caution had begun to take its toll. Jumping into intense, whirlwind relationships, like riding a roller coaster, was no longer just thrilling. Those who once loved the rush began to taste something else entirely. In a fleeting moment, movement ascends to great heights before rapidly plunging down. That swift motion once made hearts pound and race, giving rise to screams that release the overflowing emotions within. The changes that occur within just a split second create excitement and thrill for the rider. However, in the end, when the ride comes to a stop, the safety belt is unfastened, and one steps off the attraction. Some people are left dizzy, nauseous, spinning, and in distress. The impact can be so severe that it leaves them with such a strong aversion, they no longer wish to ride it ever again. Loft was one of them. This lesson made her yearn for simplicity, something not flashy or dramatic. If possible, the tall girl wished to meet and love purely, without other factors forcing her to accept painful compromises like she's doing now. She dearly hopes that one day she will have a good love, a love that doesn't leave anyone wounded, unlike this time.